Adam Gray is better known as the Real 27 Guy in hobby circles. He's the host of the Basketball Card Podcast, owner and editor-in-chief of the Basketball Card Fanatic magazine. And he returns to the show today to talk about what else? Harry Potter. I've been having these super collector conversations. We've been able to hit on all kinds of different sports and entertainment collections. But until today, we have not had a conversation about Harry Potter cards. Adam, welcome to the show.
The Wax Pack hero, Mike Sommer. It's great to see you again. You and I last saw each other and talked at the National. It was good to meet you there. And I will tell you something that I think a few people might know about me already, which is that when you asked me to come on and talk about Harry Potter cards, I don't know that there's any topic in the world that I would have rather have you ask me about. I haven't had anybody ask me to talk about this, and it's something that I have a lot of passion for. So thank you for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you are available and willing to come. That's a great starting point, though. Why do you have this passion for Harry Potter and Harry Potter cards?
I think a lot of people experienced Harry Potter the same way, which was when the books were coming out and they were obsessed with it. And, there were these midnight sort of like releases of the books, and people were going to their bookstores and buying the books and then reading them all the next couple of days until they were done. That wasn't me. I had no interest in reading when the books came out. The first one came out when I was in like high school, I think in the late 90s. And then, or I should say the first movie came out and before that, the books came out. I don't even know exactly when the books came out, but I didn't really like read them. I think I watched the first one, in the late 90s, and then, or maybe early 2000s. And then I went on a mission to England. And so from October of 2002 to October 2004, I was in England. And when I got there, there were these double-decker buses everywhere that had like pictures of Hermione or of Harry and Ron. And I just thought it was stupid. I was like, oh, that's cool. These weird British people, they've got these buses everywhere. And they've got, these characters, and Harry Potter's this thing, whatever. And I just thought it was all dumb. And so I lived there for 2 years thinking Harry Potter was dumb. I didn't like watch movies or anything while I was there. And so I didn't even know whether I liked it. I came home. I think I saw another one of the movies somewhere along the way. I didn't really care. And then after I met my wife, we went to the number 6 movie, which is called The Half-Blood Prince. And I found myself like loving it. And maybe it was because I had this nostalgia for England, but I loved the movie and I thought it was super interesting. And so my wife's name's Angie. Angie and I went and we watched all of the movies again, leading up to 6. And then we watched them again. Like we watched them like 2 or 3 times, maybe more than that, honestly. And we just sort of fell in love with the story. And both of us went back and we read the books and we thought they were really fun. And then we waited for the 7th movie and the 8th movie. And we were there on premiere nights, and we had such a fun experience with them. Then I had kids, and as we had kids, I've read the books aloud to my kids multiple times. I'm one of those dads that like makes all the voices, Mike. Like Hagrid's got a different voice than Dumbledore, than Snape. And my kids know the voices, and you have to know, like, that many books, it takes so much time to go through them. Harry Potter has become like this, like really important part of my family's life and my life. And I know that sounds like some people are going to hear that and they're going to go, oh man, this guy's totally cringy or whatever. But like, it's become an important part of our family's lives. And so when I discovered or sort of rediscovered the idea that there were cards that were made while the movies were coming out, and there aren't very many of them, and they include things like autographs and set props and costume cards and stuff. And then I started getting into those and researching those. I couldn't have been more excited for it. I went head over heels crazy. I don't even want to talk about how much time I spent or how much money I spent, but Mike, I just loved getting into this stuff. It was early 2022. I got into it. And for about a year, it's like all I did. I went crazy with Harry Potter cards. And that sort of takes us up to today.
So you had developed a passion about Harry Potter over the last several years, but it sounds like it wasn't until early 2022 where you started to connect the dots between this passion that you and the family had and the fact that there were cards that existed for Harry Potter. So did that thought not even cross your mind throughout the, how many years was it that you were actually kind of watching the movies, getting passionate, reading it to your kids? How long was there between that time? 4 5 years?
Well, I think Half Blood Prince came out in 2006 or 2007, and then we've been kind of obsessed with Harry Potter as a family, really, like since then, and more. I didn't start having kids till 2010, so we didn't start reading until 2015, 2016 ish. So that's been less than a decade. But I've loved the movies all that time. I think the question that you're asking though is interesting because I've always been a basketball card collector because I love basketball, but I didn't ever really jump to the idea that entertainment could have these tangible, pieces of cardboard that would be interesting to me because I just never thought that way. It wasn't until a friend of mine posted a picture of a Harry Potter autograph card where I went, huh, that could be kind of cool. And then I remembered back when I worked at the card shop, I worked at a card shop from 1999 through like 2000, what was it, like 2007 or 2008. And I remember him opening these cards and thinking those are dumb. Because remember, at the beginning, I thought Harry Potter was dumb. I never would have paid attention to the cards. And then when I remembered him opening those packs and I saw those cards that were out there, I was like, this could be interesting. And like happens to card collectors, sometimes when you start researching, you end up in this place where you're like, hey, this is even cooler than I thought. And then you go down this rabbit hole and it consumes you. And like, I can't tell you how many times, Mike, I'd be like going to bed and thinking about like how Harry Potter card odds worked and like what the coolest cards were going to be in the long term and which cards I needed to add to my set. It was just like I've been with basketball cards, but in a whole different way. And that was really cool.
So if anybody knows you or they've been paying attention to your basketball card fanaticism, they know that you love to dig in. You love to know the background, the research, the history of both the players, the people that you're collecting, as well as the cards and the products themselves. And, you mentioned you started your interest was piqued about this Harry Potter stuff. What was the first, let me ask it this way. From the time where your interest was getting piqued, how much time did you spend doing research, finding out, learning about what was out there before you made your first purchase of a Harry Potter card?
I probably studied, I don't know, maybe probably like 10 to 15 hours before I made a purchase. And although that sounds like an incredible amount, that's probably less than I normally do. I don't buy a lot of cards. I love basketball cards, but I don't buy a lot anymore that I want for my collection. I probably do more like research per card than like anybody, but that just means that I'm insane. I don't really take a lot of pride in that. I think it's just who I am. The Harry Potter stuff, I felt like I really jumped into more so because I just didn't know that it really was there. And then once I started learning and I started thinking about the rarity and the cultural significance, I kind of was blown away by the values of that stuff compared to like the values of modern basketball cards. And this is the way to think about it. At the point when I started collecting them, LaMelo Ball was one of the big names in the NBA. And LaMelo Ball has this like terrible little squiggle autograph. And his big cards at the time were like the National Treasures rookie cards with like the big pieces of patch, and there were 99 of them. And then there were all these different variations, and they were like $20,000 or some crazy amount of money. So I looked at that, and then I looked at like Daniel Radcliffe's first autograph card, which was one of the first big cards that I bought. I think I paid, and it's not cheap, right? It was expensive. I think it was like $5,000 that I paid for this card, which again, I know is a lot. But I was like, let's see, Daniel Radcliffe, who has around 100 of this card, and he doesn't have a million variations. He doesn't have all this other stuff. He signed it during the movies. He's one of the best known, his character is one of the best known characters, if not the best known character, like of our generation. And he signed it when he was like a teenager. And then you've got LaMelo Ball, and I'm like, and his autograph's terrible, and Daniel Radcliffe's autograph, you can actually read it. I compared these two things, and I was like, You're telling me this is worth like this LaMelo ball is worth like 5 times as much as this? Not only does that not make sense, but I like love this, and this is hard to find, and it's really cool. I'm holding my hand up. I know that some people are just listening on audio, but they know what I'm getting at. Like Harry Potter is what IPs are bigger than Harry Potter? And then more importantly than that, what did it mean to me and my family? And as we collected the cards together, how would my kids get into it? They didn't get into it as much as me, honestly. They got into it, and they thought it was cool seeing those cards sort of come home and like, oh, hey, we got Neville's autograph today. We got Ginny's autograph. We got Mrs. Weasley. I remember, as each of those came in, my kids really liked it. But to go back to your question, it was less time than honestly than you would think compared to how I think about other cards. But I was so enamored with it that I went crazy, Mike. Like I went crazy with time and with money on these cards, and no regrets there at all.
So once you got started, once the floodgates started to open, where did you go? You mentioned that Daniel Radcliffe was one of the first cards that you pursued. Where did you start to go as you were doing your research as far as what was out there and what was available? What were, I guess, first of all, what were some of the first Harry Potter cards out there? I know there's a TCG game, like a trading card game, and then there's also the Artbox, right? Where they had the sets that were based on the different films. So I don't know the order that those came in. So kind of let's start with, if somebody is interested in starting to learn what's out there, start to track down some things from the movies or based on the movies, what is there for them to go after?
There's lots of different stuff. There's stuff that started coming out right, both stickers and cards, right when the first movies were made. And I think even before the movies were made, there were some like artistic things that came out. But those weren't particularly interesting to me. What was interesting to me was that during the filming of the Harry Potters, or during the third movie, Warner Brothers contracted with this company called Artbox. I had never heard of Artbox when I first discovered the cards. But then came to learn that Artbox had been contracted by different movie studios to be like the official card producer for that movie or for that series. Like Willy Wonka, for example, is one of them, where the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka, where they had a bunch of the actors from that movie come in and sign a bunch of the cards, and then they made like inserts and they made a base set, and they did the cards really well. So they did that same thing with Harry Potter, starting with movie number 3, which is Prisoner of Azkaban. Prisoner of Azkaban's also like this great time in the Harry Potter series, because it's like right before the kids start to really grow up. They're still really kids. I think during the filming, I think Emma Watson was 13 and the boys were like 14 years old. And so, if you can put yourself back in that time, that's 2004. We're talking about almost 20 years ago now. Just remember like what Harry Potter was like in the world. It was, it was crazy. It was huge. And so when Warner Brothers contracted Artbox to create these cards, they had these kids sign a bunch of them, like 100 copies each ish. And then the popularity was obviously so great that they realized that they were going to need to come out with bigger sets. But the thing they didn't do, you would think now, given the lens of what we've seen card companies do, that as soon as like something is viewed as really popular, they would just mass produce that given set. But that's not what Artbox did. I think they made something, I should remember this. I think they made something like 5,000 boxes for the first product. That's it.
Yeah, that's not much.
It's very little. It's very low. Compare it to anything modern, and it would be about the rarest thing that's out there. The first set has an autograph of Hermione, or Emma Watson, has an autograph of Sirius Black, Gary Oldman, and it has like Dumbledore and a couple of other guys that are in the set that are a little bit rarer. The Hermione, there's only believed to be 50 of that card in the world. And, she signed it when she was super young. Well, while that set's in process, what I believe happened is that's the Prisoner of Azkaban set. At that point, I think they realized we've got to make more right away. And because of the demand. And at that same time, I don't think they were getting all of the autographs back from the actors immediately. And they didn't have this redemption sort of thing worked out yet. So instead of waiting for all the autographs to come back to put into the packs, they then created this update set. So Prisoner of Azkaban was the first one, 2004. And then later, I think also in 2004, maybe 2005. No, it's 2004 still. There's the Prisoner of Azkaban update set. And it has autographs that look like they should have been in the first set. So Hermione's in the first set. She's actually in the second set too. But the second set, all like they did some really innovative things. And I'll tell you about a couple of them. They did a double autograph with both of the Weasley twins, Fred and George Weasley. So they like didn't just do single autographs, they started to do doubles. Then they did like the card that's pretty easily viewed as like the Harry Potter biggest of all cards, which is they had the actors for Hermione, Ron, and Harry all sign on the same card. There's no stickers like you see a lot of the time with entertainment autographs today. They're all on card. And this card has 3 lines, the 3 images of those 3 from the Prisoner of Azkaban movie. It's Harry, it's Hermione, and then it's Ron, and each of the 3 signed it. But what's interesting, Mike, and I'm going in a lot of different directions here, I know, but what's interesting about this card to me is that Emma Watson's signature is a different format. It's got some similarities that let you know that it's the same as the later one, but like it doesn't have some of the same sweeping like calligraphy type elements to it. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that she actually signed the triple autograph first because it's more juvenile. It's less, if you were to see it, you were looking at it, you go, okay, I see what Adam's getting at. But because I think they didn't have probably Rupert Grint, they weren't able to release this card as part of the first Harry Potter Prisoner of Azkaban set. So then it goes into the update set. And so her first autograph that came out that I have that I love, I think that's probably actually her second autograph. The triple's probably first, even though it came out in the second set that came out a few months later. And then also in that second set, Emma Watson had another autograph, but so did Daniel Radcliffe, so did Rupert Grint. And each of them are like, there's really not very many of them. And I'd love to talk to you about why we know how much of them there are, but I've already gone off the rails a little bit. So I don't want to just jump into that unless that's something that you want to talk about.
No, I think that would be good to hear, because I think one of the things that we struggle with in any of the collectibles is getting good estimates on how much of a product is out there, right? There's a lot of people that do math gymnastics with odds and the published odds and all kinds of types of things. And sometimes those have proven to be pretty accurate, and sometimes they've been proven to be, way off. And so, yeah, for this type of thing, I think that would be great, because some people don't necessarily fully understand how limited some of these entertainment products are. And so, yeah, so if you want to share a little bit about kind of what the theory is or what the math is behind how much of this product is actually out there, that'd be great.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, the boxes are actually numbered, which is cool because you can see how many boxes were made of each product really easily. The question that's interesting to me is, with like sports card inserts, sometimes you have a card like the Jambalaya insert for basketball. You don't really have any idea how many of them there are. You can say they were 1 in 720 packs and it's a 15 card set, which means that the average card came out 1 in 10,800 packs. But how many did they produce, right? Yeah, you also have cards in sports that are serial numbered, and you know then how many of them there are because it states it right on the card. These cards, the boxes were numbered, but the autographs weren't. And there are some like prop cards and costume cards. Those are numbered, actually, interestingly. And those are really interesting. We can talk about those in a bit, but if you want to. But the autographs are interesting because you really have to like sort of like do some real research, right? And so there's a guy, I forget his name, but it'll probably come to me in a second, but he runs a group called NS Lists. And so if you just Google NS Lists, you're going to see most of the non-sports products ever made. And within this within this thing, you basically see checklists. Like you can click on any of the products. There's like this giant list of links. You click on a link and you'll see everything that existed in these products. And you see like pack odds and things like that. But the thing that's really interesting that they've done, this has gone on for decades. They started doing this back, I don't know if it's in the 80s or 90s, but forever they've been doing this. His name's, I think his name's Jeff Allerman, something like that. What they did is, back when the products were actually released, they tracked hundreds of boxes of this stuff. And out of each box, there were like patterns. And out of each case, there were patterns. And people used to open a whole case. Because remember back then, Mike, you'd have a box would be like, a box of Harry Potter stuff would be like $40. And if there were 12 boxes in the case, somebody was literally buying a case for like $400, which is crazy to think now because most of the boxes are thousands of dollars, right? To get any autograph, to pull it like on your own, you're going to spend thousands of dollars to do that. But back when they were released, they were really cheap. They were seriously like 40 or 50 bucks a box. So this Jeff Alderman, or however you say it, like he on one of these old websites that doesn't exist anymore, that you can only get to if you go through like the Internet Archive. There is evidence of him sort of tracking these cases. And if you can see 10% of a run opened, you can determine approximately how many of these cards were produced. Now, the only two things here that are important to understand, that sort of bring these things into question, these population counts into question, are: one, what if the sample was bad? I believe in his samples. I think he's done an awesome job, and I think his percentage. Sometimes he would witness 20% of a product opened, and that's what would give him sort of like the ability to extrapolate how many total there were. The bigger issue for me, and I think this is true for some of the Harry Potter cards, is sometimes I think cards were held back from distribution. We see this in sports cards today too. What if a manufacturer only places 10% and then they hold, or 50%, and then they hold 50% back, either because they're going to give them away as gifts to executives or hold them back for replacement copies or whatever else. It's hard to know exactly on some of those things, but I think that directionally it's very good. And I think if you get back to the Harry Potter cards, what you find is there are very clear patterns around how often they would release some of these cards. And so when you've got 20% of the population, or even 5% of the population open, you can extrapolate pretty well how many there are, because you know how many total boxes there are. So unless Artbox held back a bunch at a factory, you know basically how many of them there are. And the numbers are shocking how low they are. Like I said, Hermione's first autograph, there's 50. Harry's first autograph, there's 100. I think Ron is about the same. Most of the guys, it's like 200 to 250 autographs. And when you see the quality of the autographs now, and they're amazing, Mike, they're amazing because they're more like calligraphy. They really take time to make them, compared to like some of our modern athletes that just scribble something real quick, like you've seen some of these autographs, they're like check marks. And Harry Potter, like these actors, they're crazy, man. Like they'll write everything out and it looks unbelievable. Not all of them, but they took their time on them, and they didn't sign very many. I believe after looking at all the math, that Harry, Ron, and Hermione, across all 17 products that came out for Harry Potter, there's 17 total products that came out between 2004 and 2009 or 2010. Across all 17, each of those three actors have a total of about 1,000 autographs, between 900 and like 1,200 autographs each. So it's not a huge number, and since they all have a bunch of different variations, you can understand why they've become as collectible as they have been.
Now, those 17 products that you mentioned started with Prisoner of Azkaban. Did they only go from Prisoner of Azkaban through the end of the film run, or did they actually go backwards and say, oh, maybe we should have had something for the first couple movies too? Let's go release a product with those, based on those films too. Did they go back in time, or was it kind of from 3 on?
It's such a good question. They started Prisoner of Azkaban, and they did the Prisoner of Azkaban update, And then they went back and they went, wait a second, we need to go hit the Sorcerer's Stone. We need to go, we need to go hit those first two movies. So both of those first two movies have products that don't contain any of the big three autographs. So
Okay.
there's no Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe autograph from the Sorcerer's Stone. It doesn't exist. But then they do have some of those key characters' autographs. And more importantly, I think to collectors, they have some of the really key pieces of movie like props. So you'll love this. I've got such a regret on this one. But for the Sorcerer's Stone, they went back and they took the Harry Potter ticket, the 9 3/4 ticket, and they cut that into 40 pieces. And they made 40 of that card. I had a chance to buy that card for $1,000. It's probably, and I didn't do it because I was focusing on the autographs. That card's probably 10 grand now, maybe more, maybe 20 grand. It's like the grail of Harry prop cards. And so that is one of the great cards from the first one. The first one also has like autographs of Nearly Headless Nick and one other key autograph that there's like 300 or 400 of, but he only appears in that first set. And then they went through and they did the rest of the movies all the way to the Deathly Hallows 2. And they did update sets, and then they did some funky like 3D sets. And in the end, I think they ended up with 17. It's either 16 or 17 sets total that they ended up
with. Now, were there other, I'm going to kind of jump around because I'm sure there's, you had mentioned there's just some characteristics and some traits, but since we're kind of on the topic of how many different releases, how many different products were out there, one of the other things that we run into on the sports side so much is promo sets and kind of partnership sets, or, are there other Harry Potter card releases that were either done by Artbox or other manufacturers that were more, food promotional sets or other, merchandise promotional sets and things like that kind of get pulled into the whole Harry Potter universe from a card perspective?
Yeah, there's a lot of those just because the IP is so huge. In fact, I was at a store yesterday looking for Christmas presents for my kids, and they still sell these chocolate frogs that come with cards, and they're like lenticular cards. They're really cool. But to me, I don't know a lot about those. I've focused on the stuff that's like the rarer, like getting close to the actor sort of stuff, because that stuff sort of has a broader appeal to me. But I think if you were to look into it, there's probably dozens of those types of sets. The other thing that you made me think of when you mentioned that is that some of the real key, I was going to say grail type cards that have come out of Harry Potter are not necessarily pack inserted. Back when the products were coming out, if somebody ordered a number of cases, they would get bonuses for buying these numbers of cases. So you would get in fact, that card that's numbered 40 that I was just talking about, that might have been a bonus that you received, not by getting it out of a pack, but that might have been one of those cards that you got if you ordered a certain number of cases. There were also cards that were released at shows, like Comic-Con type shows, and they were specific to those. One of them, I know there's a Luna Lovegood that's like that. There's a Cedric Diggory, I think, that's like that. And I think there's a Malfoy that's like that. Some of those are really rare, like where they only signed like 25 or 50 cards. Those are some of the really difficult to find big time grail type cards that didn't even come out of packs in the end. They just were produced for a short time for a specific event.
Not everybody always either has a desire to, or maybe can afford some of the higher end autos and things like that. These were all issued in pack form as well. Some people love to put together the base set of certain products, especially entertainment products, because it's got the scenes from the movies that are pictured, or, the character cards of people's favorite characters. Have you any of your kids, as they were looking at some, have you ever acquired or put together or kept any of the kind of base card sets? And or follow-up question, were there also parallels that went along with these, like we see from a sports card perspective?
Yeah, this is a great question, Mike, because I'm 100% with you. Not everybody's going to just go after. I kind of bury myself when I say, hey, I bought a card. It was $5,000, and that was the first one. And that's really a dumb way to talk about it because that's not where collecting starts, right? Collecting starts with typically like usually gifts, cards that are given to you, or things that you give to your kids because they might just find interesting. They open a few packs, right? So for Christmas last year, I'm now remembering, I bought each one of my kids a single pack that they could open, and it was the retail version because the retail versions didn't have autographs, and so they're still pretty cheap actually. Like you can find them for like $5 to $10 a pack. And the thing that's really cool that you can discover even in the retail is they've got like great looking base sets and great looking inserts. The thing that happens with movies sometimes is they'll put the movie into a set. So like a card represents a scene rather than representing a character. But as sports collectors, we know we care about like the individual rather than specifically like a moment. Like it'd be like there'll be a card that's like this is the moment that Hermione got them out of this certain situation, and it's like okay, that's great, but I'd rather just have a Hermione type card, right? So the base sets are mostly, not totally, but mostly around the moments rather than the individuals, and they're really cheap, but they're cool looking. A lot of the inserts are more sort of focused on the individual, and some of the inserts are kind of rare. Those are really interesting. They're not expensive at all. They're still really cheap. And then there are like film cards that are serial numbered, and there's the prop cards and the costume cards. Some of those are actually pretty cheap too. I would tell anybody who's a Harry Potter fan, like literally just go to one of the marketplaces, type in Harry Potter Artbox, start looking at it, and then do the research. I started a thread on the Blowout forums that has like a ton of information. Just you can spend hours on there, or you can go to NS Lists, the one that I was telling you about earlier, and just research and research and research. And what you're going to find is like there's so many different options here. You don't have to just go for the high end stuff, but if you want to know about pop counts and things like that, some of that research could really help a lot.
When you were talking about film cards, are those the ones that have like an actual piece of film strip in there as a kind of as a relic?
It looks like it's an actual piece of film from like production, but I don't think it is. I think it's just like they made 400 of this one Hermione scene.
Okay.
You see, I think that's the case, but I could be wrong about that. I don't know for sure.
Okay. Have you ever come across, any interviews that the actors or production staff have done where they talk about the cards and they talk about acquiring the relics, the movie props that are put into them, or they talk about doing autograph signing sessions and things like that for these card sets? Or has that been kind of one of those things that we've not really ever heard from any of them about?
I haven't ever heard anything. I have looked. I've even like tagged different actors on things before that I posted. It's funny because we try to do that sometimes in the world of sports cards, and it's somewhat possible. But when you think about, like, again, think about the cultural significance of Hermione or Emma Watson versus like LaMelo Ball, and it's stupid. It's like she's known by hundred times as many people, and so getting that sort of reaction out of them. And these were such small sets, right? Like 8,000 boxes, 5,000 boxes. Like it was a drop in the bucket. I think the kids probably remember. You would think they probably remember signing 100 cards, but like honestly, Mike, I wouldn't be shocked if they don't even remember that. It was when they were kids and they were signing so much stuff, like posters and things for fans. But it was the only time they signed cards, and so I would think that they would remember, but I haven't ever heard from them.
Well, you've done a good job of kind of laying out kind of the history of these different releases, the options that are out there for us. One of the things that I did want to ask about, because I think it's such a big part of what we think about when we think about collecting, and that is the community aspect of things, right? When we think about collecting sports cards, there's all kinds of hobby communities that are out there where we can talk with people, we can bounce ideas off of people, celebrate what we've collected, or put my want list out there. Are you aware of any kind of Facebook groups or, other hobby communities that are out there that are solely focused or primarily focused on Harry Potter cards?
There, the Instagram community, I put together a just a group that we talk to each other on. It's just like a chat group. I think there's like 25 of us. The thing that's kind of hard about it is it's like a really diverse group of collectors. There's like a bunch of people from the UK and America, but then there's a lot of people from Japan. There's a lot of people from other places in Europe. So there's definitely a language barrier for like the community parts of it. It's not like sports cards in that way, but I feel like that community is growing in a lot of ways because there haven't been like places where they can come together. That blowout thread's a pretty good example. It's been a very viewed thread. If you just go to blowout and type in Harry Potter Artbox, you'll see the thread, and there's a lot there. There's also a lot on Facebook as well. So that's probably the place that I would recommend anyone goes if they want to get to know people, but also message me on Instagram. I actually have a Harry Potter specific Instagram account. It's 27guy_Harry Potter. And that's where I post all of my Harry stuff. I had to sell a good percentage of my Harry Potter stuff when I bought a really key Kobe Bryant card earlier this year. But I still have all of my very best Harry Potter stuff. Like I still have the triple that I was telling you about, which is honestly like the hardest card I've ever found. Like I love that card. I still have the quad. The quad's really cool. Did you ever see the movie The Goblet of Fire?
Mm-hmm.
So they have like the 4 Triwizard champions.
Yep.
So this card has a piece of each of their uniforms and each of their autographs. So it has all 4 of them. With the autograph and the piece on the same card, and they only made 100 of these cards. So I think that's probably like the second best Harry Potter card. I have that, I have the original Hermione and the original Harry, and then I've got a few other one-offs. But those are really like the best autograph cards that are out there, and people are searching for those like crazy. It's just like anything else though in the world of cards. The best stuff is hard to find, and it never pops up for sale. You just never see them hit auction. So, the first Hermione now, last time I sold a couple of them when I was paying for that big Kobe card, they're over 10 grand now. It's not an easy thing to jump into. And, I don't know what will happen in the future. Obviously I don't want to suggest that I do, but it seems to me that Harry Potter fans, are some of the craziest fans out there. And the fact that there's this sort of niche group or niche collectibles out there is something that card collectors have really gotten into. But the question that I think really still remains, Mike, is do people who are fans of Harry Potter want to collect cards? We know that as baseball and basketball fans, we love cards. We know that. Like that's a thing. There's big groups. We don't know that so much about entertainment still. And I think that's a TBD thing. I don't know if that's what's going to happen over the years. I think there's a good chance that it'll continue to take off, but would it shock me if like that world doesn't really ever progress to become like card collectors? We know they love the series. Do we know they love cards? Do you know what I mean? Does that question make sense?
Oh, it absolutely does. And it's a question that's been on my mind a lot too, as I've continued to get more and more interested in some of these entertainment products and entertainment releases. And I think one of the other things that we hit on earlier that I think is super relevant to that conversation is there is an interest, there's a growing interest, but to some extent it still is being balanced by the availability of product to collect.
Yeah.
And the supply and the demand for some of these entertainment products are at that point where, like you had mentioned, there's not a lot of supply.
Yeah.
And so the fact that there may not be as many collectors or people who are interested in Harry Potter cards as there are overall Harry Potter fans, but there's enough of them that the demand for those autographs, relics, some of those key cards are still really high. I have the same thing. My parallel is Stranger Things.
Stranger
And
Things.
so
Yeah.
I've been pursuing a series one, the 2018 top series one or season one release master set of everything that was put out there for Stranger Things. Now I've not dug into any of the subsequent releases, but on that first one, there are relic cards that came in every blaster box. And when it first came out, they're just manufactured patch relics. You could buy them for 50 cents a piece. Nobody cared, right? But those are drying up because the overall print run on that product was not near as high as people were thinking that it was going to be. And even those manufactured patch relics are sometimes $10 to $20 a piece, right? For something that came in every single retail blaster box. And the costume relics, like I just finished, it should be in the mail today. Actually, it's out for delivery as we speak. And by the time people see this, I will have posted it. But there's like 6 just pure costume relics. And I got the Nancy Wheeler, the last one that I needed for that is in the mail today. But I paid $100 for it because they never come up. And when I saw it, I bought it. And so just a plain costume, all the other ones I probably paid $3 to $15 for. But this one I've seen it once or twice in the last 2 years. And so I jumped on this one. The autographs are similar. That some of those key ones, you just never see them, right? And so the Millie Bobby Brown, you don't see it. You can see some of the really limited ones, and they have asking prices of $4,000 or $5,000 on them, out there on eBay. But even some of the other kind of key characters, it's definitely not uncommon to have to pay $200, $300, $400, $500 for some of these other autographs. Now it's not that they're super rare. It's not that, but there's that balance of the demand and the supply that's out there that have created a pricey product for some of these non-sports cards or entertainment cards, but they'll never have the pure population of people who are collecting them. But there's that balance is right there for desirability for the people who are fans.
That last point that you made there is the most interesting part to me, because like let's compare Stranger Things, which I know about the Stranger Things too, because I love Stranger Things and I love the cards. I love them. I was so into the Harry Potter stuff that I wouldn't let myself get into the Stranger Things stuff at the same time. But I love that play for you because it is so, there's not very much of it. It was a lot cheaper. The thing that I think is different is that Stranger Things came out zero cool, fanatics. Cards were really cool when it came out. And so there's more people who know about it, right? When the Harry Potter cards came out, we were in that real lull in the world of card collecting between 2004 and 2010. Nothing was super popular back then. Like card collecting wasn't as cool then as it is today. And so we can just have a basic conversation about like supply and demand and how that affects it. But I think there's also a conversation to be had about like whether the collectors of Harry Potter type stuff will ever really care about the cards. Now, we know they care somewhat because some of these cards are so expensive, right? We know that literally the most expensive card up until earlier this year that I'd ever bought was a Harry Potter card. So obviously they have a lot of value. I get it. But not compared to like what they are in culture. Like in our culture, like it's mind-blowing to me, Mike, that the big 3 from Harry Potter, that they signed one card ever. They only signed 50 copies of it. 50 copies in the whole world for those 3 on the same thing. That to me, and how that important that is, and you compare that to like the same value in the world of sports cards, it doesn't make any sense. From a cultural significance part, like the Harry Potter card is so much bigger than almost anything I can come up with in the world of sports cards. Really, like how can these 2 things be worth the same is what I say to myself. But the reason that it is that way, I believe, is that Harry Potter collectors have not, at least at this point, transitioned to be card collectors. Will Stranger Things collectors, people who love Stranger Things, will they end up gravitating towards the card medium as opposed to, I was at the store the other day and I saw this like electronic Demogorgon, or like the clothes that you could wear, or the posters, or the movie paraphernalia, or all the different things that you can collect in that world. if the world of collectors ever focuses in on the card medium, then you and I, from a financial perspective, will be set, because we'll have these really rare collections, and you'll have so many people who are out for that sort of thing. And I think that there's a chance that that could happen. I do. I think there's a real chance that can happen, but I don't know it's going to happen, because I know, again, I know sports collectors love cards. Not all of them, but a huge portion. I don't know yet if entertainment lovers love cards. I think they should, and I could walk through a million reasons why it's like stock and it's like art and it's really cool and it's like it's way better than like some random thing that this guy put together, or like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things about cards that are so cool, and I know you and I have given a lot of our lives to it, so we both feel that way. But I don't know yet. The jury's still out on whether these fan bases will ever move so much into cards. But if they do, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that too. I will do my best to continue, just like you do, to sell how great our hobby is. Whether you're a sports card collector or whether you're an entertainment card collector, there's something about those pieces of cardboard and the art that comes with that, the representation of what um, those cards represent, like the representation of what they represent. Yes, of course, Mike. But what those cards mean and how using that card lets us tell a story about why that sport, why that athlete, why that IP, that character from a movie or TV show, why that's important to us. We see that, and I hope other people continue to get to see that. Well, hey, we've been spending about 45 minutes so far talking about Harry Potter cards, talking about entertainment cards. I really appreciate you spending a few minutes letting us kind of behind the curtain on Harry Potter, why it's important, some things that are out there. If other people are as passionate as you are about Harry Potter, of what is out there for us to pursue and to collect. So, Adam, thanks so much for an opportunity to talk Harry Potter and Harry Potter cards.
Mike, thank you. I said at the beginning of the episode before we started that I was worried that I would get going and I wouldn't be able to stop. I tried. I know it probably feels like I talk too much, but I really think that if you're a collector of cards and if you love Harry Potter, I think it's such a cool thing. It's not expensive in so many different ways. And then if you want it to be expensive, it is in certain ways. And if anybody has any questions, I feel free to reach out to me. I'm not difficult to find, and I would love to help people understand, whatever it is that they want to go after in that world. I'd love to talk about the things that make it fun, and some of the rarer types of things. And just thank you, Mike, for giving me a chance and a platform to talk about these things, because I love it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and hopefully people are going to be able to refer back to these couple episodes as kind of anchor episodes if they want to dig in and learn more about Harry Potter. So thanks again, Adam. I appreciate it.